Sir, we have objects breaching from interstellar trajectory, not debris. Fleet signatures. Thousands. The operator's voice cracked as if his throat had dried mid-sentence. On the hollow screen, the grid over Earth's moon flared with red. Orbitals blinked. Trajectories converged. The stars had been quiet for centuries. Now they screamed. Reykjavik's underground command bunker, buried beneath meters of frozen basalt and steel, had never felt warmer. The recycled air carried the scent of hot circuitry and overworked palms. Boots scraped across the metallic floors. Coffee sloshed in trembling cups. It was 1:16 UTC. Silence fell across the command floor, except for one sound, the thump of a single heart. Picked up by the bunker's biometric tracker, Tarkin Vin stood motionless before the central command table. His shirt, half tucked from being yanked out of bed moments ago, clung to his skin with sweat. 38 years old, once a quantum theorist, now Earth's last chance. No medals decorated his chest, no formal ranks pinned to his collar. Just the weight of consequence. How many ships? Tarkin asked, his voice low, steady, like a surgeon preparing for amputation. Initial sweep counted 2,000. Wait. Update just pinged. 3,000 confirmed. Mixed tonnage. Largest classes eclipsing 4 kilometers in length. That's... a full invasion armada, Tarkin finished. He turned, his boots slow across the steel plating, scanning the rows of screens, each echoing the same truth. The skies were no longer Earth's. Not alone. Ring the room secure, he ordered. Every comm line snapped. Globally, a black, silent shroud descended over Earth's external comms. No pings, no responses, no signal leak. Reykjavik became the mind of a world that no longer breathed out. One of the techs leaned in. Sir? They're broadcasting. Tarkin's eyes narrowed. Translate. The screen lit up. A deep voice, filtered through artificial clarity, vibrated through the speakers. The tone wasn't angry. It wasn't curious. It was bored. Imperial. Inhabitants of Earth, you have breached the sanctity of regulated quantum space with your unauthorized transmission. The High Command of the Galactic Empire now asserts jurisdiction. You have until 4:00 UTC to initiate planetary surrender. Any resistance will be nullified. This is a lawful enforcement. Oh, the words settled like ash on fire-damaged lungs. No threat, just procedure. One of the junior analysts whispered, We only sent one signal, a test. Tarkin didn't look at him. To them it was a howl. The bunker lights dimmed. Global feeds rerouted through Reykjavik. Terran Concord leaders from across the planet blinked into holographic view. Military, political, economic heads. Their expressions ranged from disbelief to naked fear. Do we have options? One of them asked. Tarkin didn't answer. He walked to the corner of the war room, where a digital model of Earth's current defense array rotated slowly. It looked like a child's shield drawn in chalk beside a war engine. 300 orbital platforms, built over decades of peace treaties. Half were automated, 50 ships, some still in post-construction calibration. They weren't war-tested. Most crews had trained for asteroid maneuvering, not fleet engagement. One leader, a hard-eyed marshal from the African coalition, cut through the silence. If we act first, we risk total vaporization. Do nothing, Tarkin said, turning slowly. And it won't be vaporization. It'll be extinction on repeat, system by system. A young comms officer raised a trembling hand. Sir, permission to speak? Tarkin nodded. We've got a timestamp sync on the Empire's fleet. They're not adjusting orbital patterning, no microthrust corrections, no variation in their formation architecture. Tarkin's brow furrowed. Repeat that. They're not compensating for Earth's magnetosphere or thermal wakes. It's like they're plugged in, hardwired. He stepped forward, eyes narrowing. Pull their formation data and map it against comm frequency dispersion. I want every burst logged." The officer hesitated. "You think they're operating through a central net?" "I think they're not used to being questioned, and when you don't expect resistance, you don't build for failure." Static filled the side monitors. Tarkin paced toward the operations table again, rubbing his eyes with calloused fingers. His mind worked not like a general, but like a theorist tracing anomalies backward to origin. "There's a command node," he said aloud, piecing it together. "Has to be. You don't move 3,000 ships without central processing, especially at that tonnage. You don't hand out sovereignty to every dreadnought." "You're suggesting we attack the node?" one of the Concord leaders asked, uncertain. "No. I'm saying we find it. Then we decide whether to speak or shatter." Someone on the comm line laughed nervously. "We don't even know where it is." Tarkin glanced to the main screen. The Nexus, the largest ship, parked perfectly dead center of the formation. No escort. It didn't need one. Started ghost mapping of its comm frequencies, every pulse, every microsecond delay. If it really is the center of their fleet AI coordination, we don't need to match their strength. We just need to pull one thread. No one spoke. Tarkin walked toward the window slit above the room. A narrow, transparent strip looking out toward the cold northern sky. Past the clouds, past the low-sitting aurora, somewhere up there was an empire. And they believed this planet would fold. He didn't shout. He didn't smile. He only spoke, calm and quiet, but the words sliced through the room like Arctic wind through glass. They came expecting a signal. We'll give them silence they'll never decipher. The room held its breath. Earth didn't respond. Earth listened. As Reykjavik began to prepare the storm, the snow outside Reykjavik fell slow and silent, untouched by the chaos brewing above. Inside the bunker, the silence was different. Tense, loaded. Everyone could feel it. A fleet of 3,000 alien warships hung over the Earth, and humanity had nothing but silence to offer in return. For now. Tarkin Vin stood hunched over a digital table, its soft glow casting shadows under his eyes. He hadn't sat since the feed from the Empire stopped broadcasting. A map of the enemy formation pulsed in front of him, red icons like blood droplets floating in black water. "Expand the central structure," he ordered. The Nexus bloomed across the screen, massive, symmetrical, humming with encoded data traffic. There were no visible weapon banks, no support cruisers, no planetary scanners, just a command ship in name and position, too exposed for its size, too confident to care. "Zoom into their signal hierarchy," Tarkin said. Across the room, Joran Dahl, Earth's lead comms analyst and a man who hadn't shaved in 3 days, tapped a string of commands with shaking fingers. The audio monitors lit up with frequencies, pulses, and embedded data packets. Compressed, looped, rigid. Tarkin's eyes narrowed. "That's not decentralized." Joran looked up, startled. "Exactly. All command traffic leads back to one route. One origin, one destination, the Nexus." Across the war room, someone let out a breath too loud and heads turned. "You're telling me," one of the Concord envoys growled through his hologram, "that their entire armada, 3,000 warships, relies on a single node?" Joran nodded, jaw tight. "If that node fails, the fleet won't vanish, but it will stutter. Drives, targeting, maneuver sinks. They'll lose their edge." Tarkin folded his arms, gaze still locked on the display. "They built a sword without a hilt. It cuts well until someone tries to grab it." Silence followed, broken only by the hum of processors and the subtle hiss of oxygen systems cycling through the room. The digital clock ticked to 1:36 UTC. Jessica Preseridinum. Tarkin turned toward the back wall, a sealed section of the interface, blinking green. Password protected. Buried. Classified. Even within the bunker. He input the key. "Project Umber," he said. The file opened like a wound. A schematic of 12 Arctic base structures appeared, each buried beneath kilometers of ice. Linked by fiberless communication tunnels and cryogenic containment systems, each rig contained a node of Earth's most secret project. A quantum interference array, designed not to destroy, but to distort. Joran's breath caught in his throat. "Sir, that was mothballed, still experimental." "Not anymore," Tarkin said. "If what we found is true, Umber can disrupt the Nexus sync pattern, enough to cause cascade errors across their entire fleet net." "You mean shut them down?" someone asked. "Momentarily," Tarkin replied. "Long enough to act, long enough to strike." The room splintered into chaos. "You'll expose our most advanced tech. They'll retaliate on instinct. If we misfire, they'll turn the crust of this planet into vapor." Tarkin slammed his hand down. "Then we don't miss." He stepped forward, shoulders squared, voice cutting clean through the protests. "You want safety? There is none. You want certainty? We gave that up the second they crossed lunar orbit. This isn't about winning. This is about not vanishing." The conquered feed buzzed with hushed arguments. Faces flickered. Someone yelled off-screen. One of the counselors from the Pacific Coalition broke through. "Assuming we greenlight this, how do we deliver the trigger pulse without drawing the entire fleet's attention?" Kark's answer was ready. "We bait them." He turned back to the digital map and highlighted a swarm of Empire corvettes. Agile, patrolling the lower orbit in near-perfect loops. Corvettes are always the eyes. They'll be the first to react. We send in stealth drones, 40 of them, silent, passive, barely visible. We maneuver them to the lower orbital range over the Arctic, make it look like we're staging something. The Empire will tighten its formation around the zone, and that brings the Nexus into the Umber Array's radius, Joran finished. "Exactly," Tarkin said. "The Array needs them close. Their arrogance will help us. They'll assume it's panic." A second of silence. "Then what?" someone asked. Tarkin looked at the digital clock. 1:44. "We pull the trigger at the next command sync cycle," he said. "Catch the Nexus mid-transmission, short the stream, collapse the net. When their sky goes dark, we move." Murmurs of assent echoed from the conquered windows. Still hesitant, still afraid, but listening now. Earth had no other blade to wield. He turned to his operations chief. "Prepare the launch order. 40 drones, Arctic low-orbit insertion, set launch at 2:00, full stealth. No beacon transmission. They die to quiet." "And if the Empire detects them early," Joran asked, "then we act before we're ready. There won't be another shot." One of the comms officers brought over a handheld for biometric authorization. Tarkin didn't hesitate. He placed his thumb on the scanner, eyes locked on the Nexus. "This isn't a war," he said quietly. "It's timing." The officer paused before executing. "Sir, if this fails, what happens to Reykjavik?" Tarkin smiled, but it wasn't comfort. "Reykjavik goes first. That's why I'm staying here." At 1:58 UTC, the drone launch sequence was sealed. Coordinates input. Trajectory masked beneath northern storm cover, Earth's last offensive asset. Unarmed, silent, shaped like ghosts, prepared to leave the planet. As the first drone detached from its cradle, the ground beneath Reykjavik trembled. Not from impact, not from threat, but from the sound of machines preparing to defy extinction. Harkin stepped to the edge of the central deck and stared at the digital model of the Nexus, its comms matrix flashing like a neural spine. He whispered to himself so low no one else could hear. "Their chain of command isn't made of steel, it's made of light. And light, we can bend." The launch tubes hissed open under pitch-black skies. 40 drones, no larger than compact shuttles, matte-skinned, heat-dampened, their engine noise buried under Arctic winds, rose in synchronized silence. At 2:01 UTC, Earth released its phantoms. From Reykjavik's deep bunker, the world watched in breathless quiet. No news feeds reported it. No civilian eyes would ever see it. These weren't the heroic fighters of old war myths. They had no names, no painted flags, no broadcast signals. They were born to disappear. "Visual feeds coming online," said Operative Malarick, one of the orbital recon specialists. His voice was even, but his fingers drummed against the table. The main screen lit up with feeds from the drone swarm, slow, gliding footage of the upper thermosphere. Dots in the distance, too massive to comprehend. The Empire's fleet. Hanging. Watching. Waiting. Jorindal leaned closer to the tactical table, brow tight. "They're not adjusting yet. Formation still wide. Nexus is holding dead center, same sync interval, same command relay pattern." Tarkus stood behind him, arms crossed, jaw locked. "Good. Let's give them a reason to tighten the noose." "Activating Bloom Array," said another officer. "Power grid fakes are online, deploying thermal distortions across Arctic grid lines. Hundreds of kilometers below, within the frozen ice fields, heaters hidden beneath research stations flared at once. A ghost army of false signatures rose into the Empire's scanner range. Simulated EM chatter mimicked hurried orbital uploads. It looked like Earth was preparing a counter-launch. It wasn't. "Lurz said," Tarkin said. "Let's see if they bite." One by one, the massive dreadnoughts hovering above lunar orbit began adjusting their angular drift. Corvettes at the front edge of the formation looped back, dipping lower, scouting the signal field. From the drone cockpit feeds, the view shifted. Dozens of Corvette shadows carving across the edge of the atmosphere like silver knives. Their hulls caught no sunlight, no blinking lights. Built for silence, built for suppression. Drone operator Vale's voice crackled through the command room. "Turk out, we've got proximity flares. Corvs are scattering, they're chasing signatures." "Hold formation," Tarkin responded. "Let the illusion breathe." Down in the Arctic deployment facility, half buried beneath meters of frost-bitten rock, the 12 Umber rigs stood quiet, lights dim, engines cold. For now. The project engineers waited with their hands hovering over ignition commands, waiting for a word that wouldn't come until the sky itself blinked. Jurin pointed at the telemetry overlay. "They're closing the gap. Dreadnought flanks are moving inward, slow, cautious. Nexus is still nested in the middle. They think we're prepping a launch corridor. They're tightening their defense cone." "Perfect," Tarkam said. "Keep feeding them heat." "Corvette 17 is sweeping closer," Vale said. 10 clicks from drone line, not reacting, passive scan mode. "Stay cold," Tarkin ordered. "Nobody pulses. Nobody breaks shadow." The drone feeds showed streaks of ice across the upper layers of Earth's atmosphere. No sun, no stars, just black sky and synthetic frost. From Vale's screen, the Empire ships looked like buildings falling in reverse, massive, hovering, unmoved by gravity or doubt. Then, everything shifted. "Contact," shouted Vale. "Corvette 17 just went active. EM burst detected, bouncing against Drone 6. They saw something." "Evasive now," Tarkin barked. "All drones switch to pattern theta, break formation, active scramble." The table exploded into movement. Operators launched counter-noise protocols. Fake collision warnings flooded enemy channels. Vale's hands flew across his panel, guiding his drone between cloud veils, angling it under the curvature of a thermal updraft. But it was too late. On screen, one of the drones shuddered. The footage cut violently. The last frame showed streaks of light piercing the edge of the sky. "Drone 6 is gone," Vale whispered. The room fell still. No alarms, no shouts. Just the low, morning silence of something sacrificed too soon. "Lost feed from 7 and 8 as well," someone said quietly. "Chain detonation from the Corvette's concussive sweep." Tarkin stepped forward, fists clenched. "They won't stop now. They'll come lower." Every scout ship, We'll sweep Arctic orbit. Joran nodded grimly. We've got 12 minutes before the corvettes make a full recon pass over the rigs. Then we don't wait anymore, Tarkin said. He tapped the line to the Arctic field teams. Begin Umber sequence. Initiate power core awakening. Begin full system heat. The reply from the deep field station was clipped and calm. Copy. Umber grid warming. We're climbing past critical in 7 minutes. If we keep the threshold, we're inside the pulse window. Outside, the northern winds howled across the ice as the rigs began to stir. Engines humming under the crust. Heat creeping through layers of frost-like breath behind glass. Tiny seismic readings flashed on Reykjavik screens. A young analyst in the back turned to Tarkin. Sir, what happens if the Nexus doesn't enter range in time? Tarkin didn't look at him. Then we watched the sky split open before breakfast. The main screens showed the rest of the drone squad. Some diving beneath Earth's magnetic edge, some floating through cloud drifts. They were the smallest pieces in this war, but they carried the greatest burden. In Vale's cockpit, his voice returned. Sir, they're all around us. Ships moving without a sound. Their shadows cover half the sky. Tarkin watched through Vale's lens. Slow pans of corvettes coasting overhead, massive heartless machines. They bore no markings, no windows, just hulls built for silence. And yet they don't know, Vale added. They don't know what waits below. Static flickered across his feed. The drone's position was fading. Vale, cut feed now, Tarkin ordered. You're too close. The line clicked. But Vale's last words cut clean through. They think they've seen all our skies. They haven't seen the dark between them. The feed went black. The room was quiet again. And deep beneath the Arctic Circle, 12 lights turned amber. Umber's silent countdown had begun. The Arctic rigs rumbled beneath the ice like beasts stirring in the deep. Inside the Reykjavik command bunker, the floor vibrated with their slow awakening. 12 Umber stations, now fully powered, sat on the edge of ignition, waiting for one order. The only thing colder than the wind across the polar caps was the silence before the pulse. Tarkin stood still, face lit by the soft blue glow of 1,000 converging data points. He hadn't blinked in over a minute. His eyes were locked on the Nexus. Clock is tight, Jorandal whispered behind him. We don't get another shot. Tarkin didn't answer. His thoughts were already 5 steps ahead. We've decrypted a new signal from the Nexus, said Analyst Wren, eyes darting across encrypted loops on his screen. They're rotating ciphers, complete cycle every 45 minutes, but... He paused. But what? Tarkin snapped. There's a compression bleed, low window. It lasts about 90 seconds before full resync. Joran leaned in. That's your opening. We hit the node while it's exposed mid-cycle. It won't firewall in time. We bypass their quantum harmonics. The whole fleet drops into command blindness. Tarkin nodded once. When's the next cipher turnover? Wren checked. 3:42 UTC. You'll have 90 seconds, no more. Tarkin looked to the map. The Nexus was now gliding closer to the Umber radius. The bait worked. The corvette sweep had drawn it in, thinking it was safeguarding the fleet's brain. They had no idea they'd parked it inside the blade of Earth's only weapon. We need a masking layer, he said. If they detect Umber warming right before we pulse, they'll scatter. We can burn the rest of the drones, Joran said quietly. Detonate them. EMP loads. They'll kill their own vision long enough to shield the pulse. The silence in the room grew colder. Those drone operators, still alive, still feeding partial telemetry. They would know what the command meant. Tarkin clenched his jaw. Authorize coordinated drone detonation at 341 sectors 3 through 9, EMP mode. Don't wait for confirmation. Understood, Joran replied, voice dry. The countdown clock hit 3:30. 12 minutes. Outside the bunker, the sky remained unchanged. Stars indifferent, wind brushing over Reykjavik's ridge like breath over frost. But below the ice, the Umber reactors spun hotter with every second. Silent. Waiting. Inevitable. "Confirming drone sync," said an officer. "All 28 remaining drones accepting final burst pathing. They're spreading across lower orbits now." "No chatter from the fleet?" Tark asked. "None," Jorn replied. "They still think we're buying time." Tarkin's stare was hard. "That's exactly what we're doing." Minutes passed like the long inhale before a first shot. Somewhere a coffee cup clinked quietly against a steel table. The bunker felt too warm, too loud in its stillness. 341. A soft vibration trembled through the deck, then another. On the main screen, dots vanished in sequence. EMP detonations bloomed across the edge of the sky, each a silent flash, each a blindfold dropped on a god. "EMP coverage complete," Jorn reported. "Corvette eyes offline, network visibility crippled." Tarkin didn't speak. He just watched the Nexus, waited. At 3:42 and 1 second, the first ripple hit. The Arctic rigs activated in absolute unison. There was no beam, no sound, no color. But the Nexus changed. It shuddered, visibly, as if struck by a force it couldn't perceive. Its rear thrusters dimmed. Its sensor arrays jittered. For the first time since its arrival, its symmetry broke. "Pulse confirmed," Rin shouted. "They're losing synchronization." Across the Empire fleet, panic rippled like cracks across glass. Thousands of warships blinked in disarray. Guidance systems stuttering, targeting arrays spiraling, propulsion drives locking into safe mode. The formation shattered. Frigates spun off course. Dreadnoughts began to drift. "No thrust corrections, no tactical pings," said Malric. "They're blind, they're blind." "Old," Tarkin said. "No celebrations." The room obeyed. This wasn't over. It had only just begun. "We've got movement in the lower formation," Jorn called out. "They're panicking, scrambling into fallback orbits. But it's all manual, no fleet net. They've trained for synchronicity, not independence." "Scan for Nexus telemetry," Tarkin ordered. "Is she still talking to anyone?" The screen showed nothing but static haze. Then a new sound filled the room. Raw, distorted, and unfamiliar. Bass, a voice, deep, cracked by feedback, cut across the local comms feed. The room froze. "To all vessels, manual override, re-establish visual formation, engage fallback theta grid. This is Admiral Vorshak. Initiate silence lock, bypass code Alpha." "Gods damn you, respond!" The Nexus was screaming. Tarkin stepped forward, watching the ship now sparking at its seams. Blue trails of overloaded energies spilled from its rear fusion rims. Its command node, once pristine, now vented light like a cracked lantern. "They've blinded the sky," Vorshak shouted again. "The grid is gone." His words weren't aimed at Earth. They were aimed at ghosts, and none were listening. Tarkin finally spoke, voice like steel cutting through smoke. "Open strike coordination channels, quiet bands only. I want our fleets moving in 2 minutes. Hit their weak edges first. No center mass. No explosions unless ordered. We use this break to pull the teeth, not shatter the jaw." Turin nodded, already relaying commands. "No time to refit. We go in as is." Tarkin turned away from the screen, hand closing into a fist. "We didn't break their fleet," he said. "We broke their rhythm. And in war, that was enough to change everything. The stars above Earth no longer blinked in symmetry. The Empire's fleet, once a terrifying lattice of exact formations and machine-precise drift paths, had become a storm of flailing limbs. Massive ships spinning in place, smaller vessels colliding in confusion. No one up there was in command anymore. Only size, inertia, and fear. Tarkhan Vin didn't smile, not even now. He stood rigid inside the operations pit, a single palm resting flat on the console. The Nexus still burned faintly in the center of the screen, energy bleeding from its dorsal fins like a wounded animal. "Status on our fleet?" he asked. "Earth's 50 vessels are in coordinated Delta Tier," Joran reported, his voice calm but dry. "No sync errors. Crews are ready." Tarko nodded once. "Deploy. No fanfare." Outside Earth's upper stratosphere, Terran ships broke their geosynchronous tether and angled upward, smooth and silent. Sleek black hulls caught the aurora shimmer as they climbed, forming no formation. Just adaptive strike lines. Unlike the Empire, Earth had never relied on a net. Its fleet was trained for solo reaction, manual correction, and chaotic proximity. "Visuals live," said Malric. The holoscreen flickered. First-person footage from the cockpit of the Verdict, then the Stonewake, then the Iron Bell. Human eyes guided every maneuver, not code. Hands gripped joysticks worn from drills. You could see the breath fog on the interior glass. Hear the soft creak of shifting hull metal. Each pilot carried a doctrine, forged not in simulation, but desperation. Below them, from ground-based silos across Siberia and the Andes, Earth's kinetic platforms fired. There were no plasma lances. No elegant beams, just tungsten rods the size of streetcars, magnetically accelerated into the void. They didn't glow. They didn't radiate. They moved fast and killed quietly. "High impact confirmed on 2 dreadnoughts," Joran called out. "Midsection penetrated, drives offline, no counterfire." Tarkin's voice was low. "Because they don't know how." On screen, the Imperial dreadnought Varric's Crown attempted to pivot. Its side cannons rotated manually, then stopped halfway. Its targeting suite flickered, confused by the lack of a central firing command. An Earth ship, barely 1/8 its mass, slid underneath and unleashed a directed charge. 2 missiles and 1 magnetic rail round to the base of its left hull. The dreadnought buckled. Not destroyed, but silenced. Empire crews had never fought without the net. Their fingers twitched toward inert controls. Screens offered no guidance. And worst of all, the silence. No admiral's voice, no predictive telemetry, just a growing panic that Earth had taken their eyes away. Inside the Nexus, Admiral Vorshak slammed his fist into the edge of the manual override panel. "Reboot the node again," he barked. "We've tried," one officer answered, covered in smoke and sparks. "Sync lines are fried, quantum recursion stalled, there's no access." "Then reroute," Vorshak shouted. "Use regional relays. Cut the fleet into local tiers." "We are, sir. No ship is responding. They're all flying blind." Vorshak's hands dropped to the edge of the command table. For the first time, the weight of Earth's move had reached his spine. "They've shattered the mind," he whispered. "And we trained no one to think." Back on Earth, Tarkin watched as another wave of kinetic salvos took down 4 more corvettes. Not a single explosive. No show of domination. Just decisions. Each one exact. Each one surgical. "Sir," Joran said, a quiet urgency in his tone. "They're still listening." Tarkin raised an eyebrow. "The Nexus?" "No, the whole fleet. They're not jamming us, not even encrypting their fallback bands. They've stopped trying to block us." Tarkin didn't hesitate. "Send a broadcast, use their own words." Joran hesitated. "Sir, the surrender demand?" Tarkin nodded. Joran loaded the file. The same Imperial voice, the same indifferent tone. "You have until 4:00 UTC to initiate planetary surrender." Then Tarkin gave the instruction. "Reverse the audio, keep the cadence, let the words fall back on them." Across open space, across drifting dreadnoughts and faltering scout ships, the message played in cold, brutal symmetry. "Surrender planetary initiate, 2 UTC 4:00. Until have you." Backwards, cold, mocking. Earth's answer wasn't a scream. It was a mirror. And the Empire saw itself. Fragmented, helpless, blind. The psychological blow was instantaneous. A patrol ship attempted to charge Earth's perimeter. Its own missile pods fired in the wrong direction. Another vessel imploded after its backup life support ignited in a feedback loop. On one Imperial feed, a commander pulled off his helmet and screamed at the stars, begging for direction. Tarkin gave one more command. Send coded directive to Earth Fleet, disable. Don't destroy. Let every crew know. We choose restraint. Malric turned to him, uncertain. Sir, that's a risk. It's a message, Tarkin said. They need to understand the difference between silence and mercy. One by one, Earth's vessels began targeting thruster arrays, sensory domes, and drive capacitors, neutralizing without collapse. The effect was eerie. Imperial ships drifted to a stop with minimal damage. Some dimmed their lights. Others powered down entirely. It looked less like victory and more like surrender in motion. At 3:58 UTC, the Nexus sat alone, surrounded. Earth ships had closed in. No weapons drawn, no warning shots. They formed a silent orbit, watching. Inside the bunker, Tarkin stood without moving. The Nexus had stopped transmitting. Hold all fire, he said. Wait. Joran leaned closer. Wait for what? Tarkin's eyes didn't leave the screen. For them to ask why they're still alive. The Nexus bridge was no longer quiet. It pulsed with chaos. Overloaded relays coughing sparks into the air, coolant mist rising from cracked vents, alarms that no longer followed any logic. The air was thick with heat and panic. Panels glowed with fractured code. Gloved hands slapped buttons with no effect. Officers shouted over one another, their voices rising in pitch, but not in authority. Admiral Vorshak stood alone at the center console. Not a single officer faced him now. Reinitialize the node, he ordered for the third time. I want that fleet back in formation. One of the junior tacticians. Eyes hollow, lip trembling, shook his head. Sir, they're not listening. They're not even trying. Half the subcommanders have rerouted to internal distress loops, a third are silent. Then override them. They're requesting direct comms with Earth. That stopped everything. Vorshak's breath hitched in his chest. You're saying my fleet is requesting parley with an unregistered species? The tactician didn't answer. He just looked away. A second officer stepped back from her station. A third powered down his screen entirely and removed his gloves. Vorshak looked around the room, blinking slowly. His officers, his soldiers, had chosen quiet, not out of treason, but because their training had no page for what Earth had done. Silence had become strategy. That terrified them more than destruction. Without a word, Vorshak turned and walked toward the sealed rear chamber of the bridge. The door slid shut behind him. Inside, the lights dimmed. He unlatched his helmet, dropped it to the floor with a hollow clang, and placed both hands on the emergency override terminal. Sweat clung to his temples. He tapped the manual life support node. It coughed static and warned of a progressive oxygen imbalance. The room smelled like burnt circuitry and failing metal. A whisper of his own voice escaped into the console. This wasn't supposed to be war. This was a message, a warning. Outside the Nexus, the Earth fleet remained in formation. Calm, expressionless. They didn't fire. They didn't blink. They simply waited. Inside Reykjavik's war room, the air had shifted again. Harkin stood in the center, surrounded by a circle of silence. The Nexus no longer broadcast anything. No commands, no defiance, no pretense of superiority. They're broken, Jorn muttered. They've lost their hierarchy. Tarkin's voice was measured, deliberate. Which means they've lost their story. That's worse. He turned toward the broadcast terminal. Prepare transmission. A comms officer blinked. To who? To everyone. Tarkin stepped into the hollow chamber as the operator gave him a nod. The red light blinked once. Then twice. Then silence. His voice filled every Concord channel on Earth. "This is orbital strategist Tarkin Vin. The invading fleet above your skies has lost command coherence. We have exercised restraint. We will continue to do so, if that restraint is matched. You have 60 seconds to reply, otherwise we finish what we started." No dramatics, no raised voice, just absolute precision. Concord leaders around the globe listened from bunkers, command centers, and hidden refuges. Civilians had no idea what hovered above them. Yet. But soon they would. The transmission fed into the global archive, automatically queued for full public release. And then, response. At 4:47 UTC, a signal flickered into Reykjavik. Imperial encryption. Then, a human-readable transmission. A single phrase. "Fleet disarmed. Hostile functions nullified. Nexus ceasing active operations. We surrender." For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Joran turned, eyes wide. "Confirming signal duplication across 2,100 ships, clean surrender flags. That's nearly the entire fleet." Tarkin's gaze didn't change. "And the rest?" "Destroyed. Or offline. 800, sir. Gone." Tarkin said nothing. He reached out and tapped the confirmation node. "Relay the signal," he said. "All Concord feeds, no delay. The world deserves to see what silence can achieve." Within moments, Earth's drones, still circling in passive orbit, activated their emergency relay function. Screens lit up in South American outposts, Russian sky domes, Southeast Asian orbital lifts. Across every Concord military node, the message played. The enemy had surrendered. No explosion marked it, no declaration, just a quiet sentence on a quiet line. Mallorik looked up. "Sir, what now?" "Secure them," Tarkan replied. "Redirect solar towcraft. Begin lunar holding operations." "You want us to dock them?" "No. We disarm them. Remove propulsion, weapons, nav cores. Then, park them around the moon. Let them sit in silence until Earth decides what to do next." He paused, staring at the blinking fleet overhead. "Let them orbit us, the way they once thought we orbited them." Joran exhaled slowly, watching the surrender list expand line by line across the screen. "They brought a galaxy's worth of metal and lost to timing." Tarkin's voice was quiet. "No, they lost to meaning. The Nexus was mute. It hung in low lunar orbit like a defeated monument, its hull dark, its engines cold. Around it, solar towcraft and Terran interceptors darted like beetles, securing docking clamps and draining what little power remained from its reserve systems. And on Earth, the real war, the one of insight and reverse engineering, had already begun. Inside the Reykjavik bunker, the atmosphere had shifted. No longer the theater of command, it had transformed into a hive of analysts, engineers, and linguistic decryptors. Walls once filled with tactical overlays now bore the internals of alien dreadnoughts, exposed, annotated, dissected line by line. Tarkin Vin stood before a rotating schematic of the Savarn-class carrier, the largest ship Earth had captured intact. He traced a hand across the holographic layout, noting the bulk of it: redundant energy conduits, inefficient AI hierarchy, and primary systems all routed through centralized lattice cores. The tech wasn't primitive, it was overwhelming, but overwhelming in all the wrong places. "Too much steel, too little thought," Joran said beside him, sipping cold coffee that hadn't tasted right since the first shot fired. Tarkin nodded. "They didn't build ships, they built certainties." Across the room, a team of engineers debated the drive architecture. Earth systems ran distributed lattice logic, modular, adaptive, capable of individual correction. But the Empire's tech? It required unity. It demanded order. Once that order fell, the fleet became a corpse in motion. "Quantum interference arrays jammed their command thread," one of the analysts explained. They couldn't rebuild because their systems weren't designed to isolate, too interconnected. Tarkin's voice was quiet. Their flaw wasn't design, it was belief. They believed control was the same as security. He turned away from the schematic and walked toward the lower deck of the bunker, where the Concord assembly waited. Representations of Earth's nations, military and civilian, stood in silent anticipation. Not one of them interrupted as he stepped forward. "Effective immediately," Tarkin said. "Quantum disruption architecture is classified under Terran Protocol 9. No civilian distribution, no AI simulation training, no second guessing. This tech doesn't belong to peace. It was forged in urgency. Let it stay there." No objections. Just a ripple of understanding across every set of eyes in the room. "And the fleet?" asked a representative from the Indian Ocean Coalition. "We maintain a quiet presence," Tarkin replied. "Minimal broadcast, maximum mobility, no pride, no signals. If anything stirs again out there, we move first." As discussions shifted to funding allocations and intercontinental manufacturing, Tarkin stepped out through the pressure doors and into the Arctic wind. Outside, the sky stretched in heavy silence. Night still gripped the pole. The stars above were sharp and fixed, no longer drowned by fear. Yet in their stead, a new sight had emerged. Streaks. Dozens of them. Metal debris from fallen corvettes and shattered interceptors, slowly burning through the upper atmosphere as they descended. The fire trails sliced across the black like comets without wishes. Tarkin stood at the edge of the observation ridge, his coat clinging to his frame, breath visible in short, even clouds. Below, far down the coast of Reykjavik, the memorial site was coming to life. 18 pillars of light. One for each drone pilot lost in the operation. Not statues, not names carved in stone, just beams. Vertical, silent, never flickering. They shone upward, unblinking, touching nothing and yet saying everything. A reminder not of conquest, but of cost. Beside Tarkin, Jorn arrived, holding a data slate. "Did you see the scans from the Dravenshell destroyers?" Tarkin didn't look away from the sky. "What did we learn? They were built to absorb kinetic impacts. That's why they didn't break on first hit. But the nav systems? Completely non-adaptive. We hit them with predictive arc fire, and they spiraled. Without recovery." Tarkin gave a faint nod. "Their bodies were ready. Their minds weren't." Joran paused. "We beat them with less." "No," Tarkin murmured. "We beat them with different." The sky cracked again, another streak, slower this time. The burning frame of an abandoned dreadnought fragment re-entering. It fell not as a symbol of triumph, but as a reminder. Tarkin watched it fade. "They sent fire," he said, the words barely audible under the wind. "We answered with frequency." And beneath those words, the earth kept spinning. Reykjavik was quiet again. Not from fear, not from silence, from purpose. The wind scraped across the northern ridge, dragging snow in soft spirals across the observation deck. The war room beneath had dimmed a standby. The threat overhead was gone. But no one here had let their shoulders drop. Not yet. Not fully. Tarkin Vin stood alone on the overlook, the black coat tight across his shoulders, eyes fixed west toward the edge of the sky. Below him, the last retrieval drones lifted away from the dark water. Their cargo, stripped propulsion cores, gutted drive memory, husks of what had once been absolute power. He didn't move as Joran approached from behind, boots crunching lightly over the frost. "They're waiting downstairs," Joran said. "Council's live. Your name came up again." "I know," Tarkin replied. "Let them finish." Joran stepped beside him, shoulders hunched against the cold. "They're not asking, they're offering. Title, fleet oversight, orbital command, Whatever you want. Tarkin's voice didn't change. I already have what I want. Joran looked at him. You turned down promotion, twice. People think you're stalling. No, Tarkin said, his tone firm. I'm keeping Earth clean. Victory makes people talk too much. Comfort makes them guess too little. Joran paused, and when they forget what it cost? Tarkin finally turned toward him. Then we remind them quietly, not through speeches, through posture. Below, in the bunker's lower chamber, a reinforced room hummed behind 3 sealed security checkpoints. Inside, Admiral Vorshak sat alone. No cuffs, no interrogators. Just a flat screen before him and a metal bench beneath. His uniform had been removed. His insignia was gone, but the pride hadn't drained entirely. Not yet. The screen lit. Tarkin's image appeared, unmoving. You already won, Vorshak muttered. What do you need now? Apology? No, Tarkin said plainly. Just understanding. Bortus leaned forward. You didn't defeat the Empire. You paralyzed a mechanism. The machine will rebuild. Tarkin didn't blink. Machines rebuild. Minds take longer. The silence hung a moment before Vorshak looked away. Your interference weapon. It won't work again. We'll adapt. You caught us once. We didn't fire a weapon, Tarkin said. We removed your crutch, and you fell. Vorshak didn't speak. Tarkin continued. When your high command speaks of Earth now, what will they say? That we are aggressive? No. That we are emotional? No. They'll say this planet waited. That we counted seconds while you counted ships. And that is something you can't countermeasure. Vorshak stared at the blank wall. They won't come again, not soon. Because they're rebuilding? No, the Admiral said bitterly. Because they're afraid to guess what else you've hidden. Transmission ended. Back in the Conquer chamber, the votes finalized. Protocol sealed, majority affirmed. Earth would say nothing. The victory would be catalogued, not celebrated. The interference systems would be buried beneath new treaties. Ansible networks would expand but remain obscured. Every satellite relayed the same outward status: stable, civil, compliant. Earth had made noise once, and that had been enough. Tarkin entered the chamber after the vote. He said nothing, no handshake, no statement, just one gesture. A signed command assigning him as chief of the newly formed Galactic Monitoring Task Force. No medals, no banner, just responsibility. By 5:15 UTC, Earth's orbital registry logged new construction approvals. 150 ship expansions. All stealth matured. No wideband broadcast. Homegrown crew training would begin by winter under noise-dampened bunkers across 5 continents. Ansible coverage tripled. In every corner of the globe, pieces moved in silence. Engineers rewrote shielding protocols. Coders mapped new signal encryption systems. Drones patrolled low-atmosphere channels in cloaked loops. Humanity had not won peace. It had earned caution. By 6:00, the sun breached the frozen ridgeline. The light was thin but clean, catching in flecks across the surface snow, turning frost to crystal. The sky, still faintly tinged with debris haze, was beginning to clear. Tarkin stood at the edge of the overlook again, arms folded, breath visible. Below him, the lights of Reykjavik blinked in quiet recovery. Joran joined him a moment later, holding a report in one hand and rubbing the frost from his collar. They'll ask questions eventually, he said. The people... They should, Tarkin replied. What do we tell them? Tarkin's eyes stayed on the horizon. Tell them we listened, we waited, and we built the only answer they couldn't predict. Joran looked over. You think it'll hold? The peace? It's not peace, Tarkin said. It's posture. We stand still, but we never stop watching. Another silence passed. Then came a low ping from the Ansible array beneath their feet. A signal, faint, pulsed, not hostile, from beyond Sol. Tarkin didn't flinch. He simply noted the signature. New contact? Joran asked. Tarkin nodded. Could be a probe. Could be a message. Could be bait. Joran swallowed. What do we do? Tarkin didn't hesitate. We monitor. We prepare. We don't blink. The two stood there as the wind swept the snow into thinner lines, the sunlight finally reaching the deck's far edge. The ridgeline below them caught fire with orange warmth as the morning broke, and for the first time since the fleet arrived, the air felt breathable again. Tarkin narrowed his eyes at the light and spoke one final thought. Soft, but firm. Before, we watched stars for awe. Now we watch them for motive. And the earth, scarred, cautious, sharpened, kept turning.